All right, next we're going to talk about the Valkyrae Reflect controversy. Let's hit the Q in. So yeah, Valkyrae and her Reflect skincare product that she actually didn't co-own, co-invent and so forth. Or at least that's what she's saying now. So if you don't know about this, I mean, it's very possible you don't. I don't know if this is necessarily the kind of content that my community cares for. We're still in the growing stage. We're still figuring out what you guys like and don't like. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. There's a couple of aspects about this that's interesting, really, that I kind of wanted to look at and explore and talk about real briefly here. So, I mean, what it's about, I should start with, is essentially, as you know, big personalities, bloggers, influencers, social media types typically come up with products once they hit a certain number that you can purchase and kind of indulge in. That ranges from merch like t-shirts and tops with their logo or their name on it, or it goes into more deeper things like this particular instance here, which is a product that protects your skin from what is known as, what was it, blue lighting? I don't even remember what was it? It's a problem that blue light. So is blue light that emits from every light source practically, I should say, I guess, including the sun. Essentially what the premise of this product is that it's going to protect your skin from getting damaged from the light emitting from your screens, such as your monitors, your phones, everything that's got a screen basically. And there's a couple of problems with this. The idea itself is not a terrible idea, and I will give Valkyrae that. I think that if this actually worked out, it could have been one of those Rihanna billion-dollar ideas, billion-dollar products, right? Because essentially, it's kind of like, well, Rihanna became a billionaire, from what I understand, from the fact that she had makeup that covered skin tones that wasn't covered in the majority of the market. So the majority of the market typically dealt with a lot of light skin tones. No one catered for much more different skin tones, darker skin tones and so forth. And while her clothing brand thing is shut down, from what I last heard, the makeup thing has blown up and made her, well, at least meant to be worth $1 billion. And this is kind of what I'm seeing with Valkyrae. To me, it was a play to actually create a product that isn't just a thing that is going to be something you just wear or use because of the person's name, what I would call merchandise products. She was trying to associate herself basically with a product that is something that could be $1 billion idea if enough people were convinced that it was actually a problem. And the problem arises from the fact that it turns out that something I read, kind of a simple way of explaining this is, if you spent something like 15 minutes in the sun, it would be the equivalent of spending 30 days consistently in front of a screen. Something along those lines. So you can essentially see that what she's done here is, well, what the people that have come to her have done is they've solved a problem that isn't a problem, or at least nothing that can be proved, because apparently the research that she actually decided was that this was a good idea can't be shown publicly, which is really weird. And this is something she spent apparently 2 years on. And I know it's easy for us now after the fact saying, kind of mocking and joking and saying, well, come on, man, you know, that's the first thing you check, right? But yeah, apparently she didn't check that the research could be actually public and that it actually is a problem enough for it to be a big sell product. Essentially, it's the classic selling or solving a problem that doesn't exist, or solving a problem that doesn't really need solving, at least at the moment. That's where it's at. Now, a couple of interesting things about this whole thing is the fact that there is this product as well. I want to say it seems like the type of product that you would buy if you were the type of person that believed that COVID was coming from 5G masses. All those kind of people that should be wearing wallpaper on their head, but we're yet using phone devices via 5G to tell us that we're gonna die if we don't, get rid of the 5G masses. How can you use a product that's killing you, that you're trying to warn people about, that's killing you? It doesn't make sense, right? You typically would use what the old school 4-paper hat wearing people would do, which is use posters, paper, and so forth. It's like the dude from Better Call Saul with the 4-paper around all of his body in it. So yeah. But what's interesting about this whole thing as well is, apart from the fact that Valkyrie herself has been making it worse by carrying on about it and responding to it, which I think the reaction has been overall over the top a little bit. I think this kind of thing always happens when you have media personalities that provide content in a way that is, their content is very much acknowledging and embracing the ideology of what I would call idolatry or worship of human beings. And that creates a problem where when you're idolized and worshipped, you're always going to fall short of people's expectations. And there's always going to be a point where people want to see you come down a certain level. And you're always going to have cancel culture with every opportunity that comes of any mistake that you make. And it's a combination of those things. I don't think that she's literally created this product try and hustle people. I think she actually believed in it. She actually believed in what really comes down to, at the moment, a conspiracy theory, or what they're classing as pseudoscience. That can be said for a lot of social media these days, but we won't go there because we don't want to get cancelled. But I don't think she was trying to hustle people per se. I think she was just trying to come up with a product, or connect herself with a product that would be more than just buying a name based on the names, a product that can live on after the person, or even while the person's not active or as popular anymore, potentially, which is a good idea. It's the next step, rather than just making the normal merchandise money type of thing, right? What's interesting as well is the fact that she kind of like tries to explain that she went with this angle of co-owner and so forth because it was simpler to use on the social media, but in a way that's kind of made things worse, because it makes it sound like she's a lot more intimate with the product, even though she's kind of trying to back away from it, and at the same time say that she still believes in it, which is kind of weird as well. I don't know, it's kind of strange. But further in the whole thing is another interesting aspect is where she started to discuss the idea of people supporting her friends in social media, the friends in social media supporting it. Kind of came out not in the way she wanted the first time around, and then she kind of had to say, I didn't mean it like this. She decided to try and focus on the people that supported her rather than the people that didn't, which is admirable, but it's always going to end up being the same thing, just in reverse. It's still going to be problems, because then people's feelings are going to get hurt, especially with social media. We're dealing with lots of egos and so forth. I mean, this is an environment of kind of like human god worship, right? So it's going to be you're going to be hurting a lot of people's feelings when you're dealing with that kind of scenario. But what's interesting is there was a scenario where, to use the same phrase again, pronounce this dude's name, is it Miscaf? Miscaf, I think his name is, gave her some really good advice, actually trying to kind of prevent her from going further and further down the rabbit hole. And what was interesting, she was going to go through a whole bunch of like Twitter and not Twitter, Reddit posts, which Reddit is kind of like a slightly less toxic version of Twitter. But essentially he urged her not to do it. He tried to help her embrace the fact that she's probably a narcissist, because there's many forms of narcissism, and it's not necessarily always the obvious form, because there is a level of narcissism you have to do to be doing this kind of business anyway. There's different forms of it, but I think all of us have a level of it, even if we're not necessarily embracing it or encouraging it necessarily. But it's something you have to kind of come to terms with, that you're going to be deemed as that. Otherwise you'd hide away and do something else. But what's interesting about it is that the fact that she was like saying about people that are friends, I think it's interesting because it's really hard to know who friends are anyway, unless there's no content to be gained from being a person's friend in social media. There's no growth to be gained. There's no cameras and no mics. You never really know who your actual friend is in social media circles and that whole ecosystem until there isn't anything to gain, until there is someone just saying, hey, let's just go hang out. No cameras, no mics, no nonsense. Just hang out, nothing to gain. Just want to be around you, enjoying your company, and vice versa. What's interesting is that even though with Miss Kef giving her this great advice and being a friend, he still made content on the thing. He made content on the thing, and I'm pretty sure I was getting ads as well. So take what you will from that. That's the takeaways of the Valkyrie Reflect controversy. We'll see how that goes. I'm sure she's still gonna shed loads of money on this thing anyway. These kids worship the ground these people walk on. They'll buy anything. If she was bottling up poop and telling you that it could make you whatever gender or color you want, they'd be buying that shit, even if it was controversial. So I'm sure she's just gonna get richer. But good on her for trying to actually create more than just another, or be associated with more than just another merchandise product.